verbal will form part of the public record and be available to the public for viewing electronically or as a written record. We just have one change on the agenda. Our delegation from the Okanagan Regional Library won't be here today. So just scratch that off. Corporate officer, any other changes? No. Okay, so if I get a approval of the agenda as amended, Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Betts, all in favor, that carries. Consent agenda, would anybody like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. If I may, I would like to the attachment B, which is the District of Hudson's Hope support for Bill 34.
Okay, so we'll move that into down to 9. So if we get a council approval of the consent agenda, please. Councillor Peak, Councillor Patton, all in favor? That carries. Thanks you, Deputy Mayor. Delegations will have the Community Foundation. Yuki. Just, sorry, just press the little button there so the red light comes on there in your business.
Test, yes. I do believe we had some slides or PowerPoint to accompany our presentation. Okay. Sorry? Oh, this is not our slides. I can wing it, so if you like. Yeah, I can speak on the land.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Well, first off, thank you so much for inviting us. And yeah, we are thrilled to be representing the Community Foundation of the South Okanagan Smokeamine and just update you on some of the work that we are doing, have been doing, and what's coming up in the year. So my name is Yuki Ihara. My role is in donor services with the Community Foundation. I've been with the foundation just coming up around 2 years. I am part of a small but mighty team of 5, made up of Erin McCran, our Executive Director / CEO, Kelly, our Office Administrator, Kim English, who's here with me today, our Regional Development Manager, and Kevin Ronigan, who looks after our grants and community initiatives. So just running through a brief history of the Community Foundation. Our Regional Community Foundation here was established in the early 90s. We started, I think, with 6 founding donors to establish endowment funds. And our first grants, it took a couple of years for the earnings to add up, but our first grants were made to a handful of local charities, I think for a total of $2,000. And fast forward 30 years later, today we manage assets of around 20 million. So this 20 million pool of assets, it's made up of endowment funds, other types of funds, and also properties that we manage and own as well. And since our inception in the 1990s, to date, we've granted out around 9.7 million to the community. And if you look at our annual granting, so this is a mix of our foundation grants, bursaries, designated grants, and also the adjudication and administration of third-party grants. We give out probably, I would say, roughly between 500 to upwards to $1 million every year now. And we started out as a community foundation, the Penticton Community Foundation, but we've actually always served the entire RDOS region. And funny enough, our staff is well represented in the region too. Kim is in Caramias. I am a Summerlander. We got a couple of Pentictonites and an Aramation. The Community Foundation of the South Okanagan-Similkameen, we're part of a larger network, the Community Foundations of Canada. There's, I think, now over 200 community foundations across the country, and we do leverage this network as well. We're often connecting with one another. There's biannual or every other year, there's conferences and other peer gatherings, and we're able to tap into, other resources and knowledge of our peers. Especially with our neighboring community foundations. We got the Central Okanagan Foundation and the Community Foundation of the North Okanagan. We're very much in close contact, and we do have agreements and or ways that we share our resources. Like myself, I support with the CRM software to better track and better identify our donors. And on the other side from CFNO, they have a graphic designer that's able to lend their services. So with the community foundations, the bread and butter of, I would say, the community foundations, the core of their work has been managing and stewarding endowment funds. And with endowment funds, the idea is to create and establish a long-lasting resources for local charities to be able to get funding from. But since then, for our foundation, we've evolved quite a bit in our last 30 years. And if I was to really summarize our work, it's really two silos. It's giving choices and funding change. My role as a donor services manager, my main goal really is to be able to connect those that want to give with those that are on the ground, creating change. And actually, I would just say that's actually our goal for all of our team members. For me, that means, working with the donors and talking to them and wanting to understand what their intentions are and how that can be best captured in an endowment fund. And our foundation is positioned to accept a variety of gift types and also establish a variety of endowment funds so that we can best match it with their intentions. The other groups that we work with as a foundation are local charities. We've got some charities that set up endowment funds just for themselves so that the annual grants are returned to them. We also do what we call flow-through funds, where the donations are immediately distributed to local charities for immediate use rather than towards the capital. We run a number of grant cycles throughout the year, a bursary cycle, a foundation cycle, and so on. And in the past couple of years as well, we're especially investing focus and energy towards charity and nonprofit organization development, looking into how can we build the capacity and how can we really strengthen the backbones of these charities. So at our 30th anniversary celebration last year, we announced the establishment of the Charity Development Fund, and that's looking at professional development opportunities, opportunities to convene with one another, peer gatherings, and so on. The last group here on this slide is the community. So we have established community funds for each of the sub-communities that make up the region. I believe there's 8 community funds, including the Summerland Community Fund, and the idea is that community members can donate to this fund, which is an endowment fund, and every year from the earnings, we're able to grant out to various local charities. And we've also got a grassroots grants program called Neighborhood Small Grants, which Kim will speak to in a little bit. And since 2014, we started our giving circles, the 100 Women Who Care and 100 Men Who Care giving circles. These invite community members to really join in, contribute, and we make a collective pool for donations that are then distributed at quarterly events where we hear from 3 different charities. And I would say the name is very, very accurate. We have about, I would say every year about 100 active members. But I would say over the years, there's been about 300 donors into this program. And together, collectively, with 100 men and 100 women who care members, we've been able to grant back over 300,000 to many, many charities, local charities in our region. Other areas of grants as well is bursaries. And lastly, just response and relief funds. The one that comes up to mind for me, it was just right when I started, was that we were in the process of administrating the Princeton Flood Relief Fund. So we were able to mobilize quickly to be able to have a collective emergency response fund and to be able to support those affected by the flood. So in terms of our work in Summerland itself, just to give a, 2023 by the numbers, around 50,000 was granted back to the Summerland community. So this includes local charities and also students, Summerland students that have benefited from bursaries. There is 4 charities that have set up Summerland agency funds. $4,000 is distributed to bursaries or in bursaries. 46,000, yes, granted to 8 different Summerland charities, and there was 4 different neighborhood small grant projects funded. And regarding our Summerland Community Fund, it's been going on for about 20 years, established in 2001. You'll see that the total donations received to build up this community fund is about 40,000, and the cumulative grants is around 25,000. And the great thing about endowment funds is that as the time passes, the total granted out number is going to surpass that donation number. Just to the right there, I've just listed a few of the charities that have benefited from the community fund. This is not the full list, but what I really just want to highlight here is the various fields that the community fund has been able to touch on. Great, I'll pass it over to Kim to talk about neighborhood small grants.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be back in Summerland on this beautiful sunny day. We're excited to announce the return of Neighborhood Small Grants. Neighborhood Small Grants empowers residents with small grants of up to $500 to bring innovative ideas to life. This year, we have over $35,000 to grant out. Neighborhood Small Grants, I will abbreviate it to NSG, aims to support grassroots initiatives and eliminate financial barriers for local projects. Through Neighborhood Small Grants, individuals are empowered to conceptualize and execute projects that address local needs, cultivating a sense of ownership and collective responsibility. By providing resources and support, NSG encourages ideas, collaboration, and sparks positive change from the ground up. This grassroots approach not only strengthens community bonds, but also cultivates a culture of empowerment where every voice matters and every idea has the potential to make a meaningful difference. Last year, the foundation funded over 70 projects throughout the region. These projects included block parties with a purpose, street art festivals, skill building workshops such as food preservation, gardening or upcycling projects, skate park beautifications, and cultural showcases. This year, residents are encouraged to submit proposals emphasizing initiatives that celebrate Indigenous heritage, cultural diversity, and youth involvement. Of course, we love to see all types of ideas and projects.
Pardon
me. Okay. Since the program started in about 2017, over $17,000 have supported neighborhood small projects in Summerland. The events last year included a welcoming pancake breakfast for a new Ukrainian family that came to settle here. There was a backyard event where local experts and neighbors shared stories. At Deer Bridge neighborhood, there was a butterfly project. And of course, the neighbors at Trout Creek are huge enthusiasts of neighborhood small grants and have built and really leveraged this little grant with other funding partners to bring that little library, the benches in the past year, and a number of other projects. So we're always excited to see the scaffolding that NSG brings to communities. With your help, we'd like to see more impactful projects in Summerland. Some years we'll see like 5 or 6. Some years there's 2 or 3. And of course, I'd really love to see more here because I know you've got a lot of community champions and a lot of creative folks. So if you have any ideas or know people that have those great ideas, please share this opportunity with them. To apply, it's very easy. The responsibility of the grantee is very simple. They plan their event, ideally bring others in to help. They host the event and share the story and a few photos of how it went. We encourage the grantees to share their stories to inspire others, but also to ensure that the money is used appropriately. And myself as the coordinator of the program, I give that support from the beginning to the end. Grants are usually awarded in June, and they have until the end of the year to host either one event or a series of events. So the grant application is open. It closes on April 20th. The criteria is pretty simple. NSG is the only program in the South Okanagan, Similkameen, and pretty much throughout the province now, the only granting program for people. Businesses, organizations, and service groups are not invited to apply, but we certainly encourage applicants to reach out and work with groups, particularly if you're working with youth, to reach out to the youth groups, youth champions, and bring their engagement in. Events must be free and welcoming. Ideally, we really like this events to be held on the street that people live on or a nearby park. Because again, this is really to deepen those connections right where we live, problem solve. The grant money can be used towards food, decorations, invitations, giveaways and prizes, third-party insurance if needed, permits. We do encourage successful applicants to reach out with municipal staff if they're thinking of having a street party to get that permit and to work closely with staff on that. Oh, and on honorariums as well. Again, we really encourage people to invite specialized speakers. There's some neighborhoods that once they have that first block party where they get to know each other, they decide they're going to have an annual event, and it may grow to where they might focus on safety and security and invite local paramedics to go through first aid response and how to use a defibrillator machine. Oh yeah, that'd be great. Yuki's going to just, if she can come forward and pass out posters and bookmarks. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
You can just give
Or you can just leave that there.
She'll,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks to Kendra. Thank you. Tomorrow evening, I am hosting a virtual info session this has been broadcasted and on social media and in local newspaper, and we've got a number of people that have RSVP'd, but it's not too late to send me an email to receive the Zoom link and join me tomorrow for more information on the program and how to apply. One thing that is different this year is that last year the CRA changed their rules for funders. And we changed our mission statement, and we are one of the first foundations in BC to get this approval to fund directly to individuals. So Neighborhood Small Grants has been hugely successful and in part has been able to expand provincially as it was piloted in the South Okanagan Similkameen with our foundation 7 years ago. And we wouldn't have been able to deliver these grants to individuals if it wasn't for the partnership with local government and the RDOS as being that flow-through partner in administering those grants. So we are deeply grateful. I'm excited that we can now grant directly to individuals because it really makes my work more efficient on the administration side. And it just is also a greater opportunity for organizations as well, not just people, but those organizations that don't have a charitable number. We're still working on what this looks like, but for neighborhood small grants, we'll be able to direct directly to individuals. So thank you for that. And please help me get the word out to Summerland residents so we can have lots of great events this summer. So thank you. And if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, both of you. Council, do you have any questions for Kim or Yuki? Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to thank you both for the presentation. It's obvious that Community Foundation just plays such a positive role in our community. And I personally know some people, not here, but who have accessed these small neighborhood grants to start building relationships in their immediate communities in their little network of roads. And it started to really make a difference. And just actually knowing who your neighbors are, as we're driving places often and we lack the opportunity to just go and meet our neighbors. So I think it's a really good starting point, and there's so many positive small events that we can individually do. And it helps to know that we can access these grants without having a charitable registered number. When you just want to get together with your neighbors and build some, wildflower boxes that support pollination, you don't have that kind of infrastructure. So good on you. I like to see this kind of positive work.
Thank you.
Have you found the type of grants you're giving for small neighborhood grants to be more varied than in the past? I guess it kind of started off as block parties and now there seems to be more different types of things.
Yes, thank you for the question. It's been really beautiful how it's evolved over the years. And I'll just kind of preface and say Neighborhood Small Grants is a Vancouver Foundation program. They created it over 25 years ago when population expanded quite a bit, and then reached out to us in 2017 to pilot it in this region. And the first year, because I would go to these celebrations and hear these really great stories and projects that happened. And the first year, when we reviewed the applications, 95% were block parties. And I felt I was doing something wrong with the messaging, and I contacted Vancouver Foundation and their grants manager, and I said, I don't know, how do you get such varied projects? These are all really just block parties. And they're like, that's the stepping stone. That's the scaffolding of neighborhood small grants, which is based on ABCD, asset-based community development. So the idea is you connect people first, feed them. If we see an application come and they have no mention of food in the budget or in the project, I send them an email, I call them, and I say, if you're going to gather people, you have to feed them. Because then they get comfortable, they start sharing stories, and suddenly they start getting creative. And quite often in the stories that come back from the project leaders, they'll say, wow, we can't wait to do this again. And so we've seen things really pivot quite a bit. And that's the beauty of the program, is it really is building capacity and citizenry at the grassroots.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Peak.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Kim, I'm wondering, can you explain the difference between so you have Community Foundation funds, and we have a Summerland Reinvestment Fund. Can you explain the difference and how those monies get into whatever pot?
Sure. Well, as Yuki mentioned, what our kind of starting point with donors is finding out what their desire and interest is. And so we have our endowment fund where people can give, and they can give it without a designation. So for example, saying, some people want it specifically for a Summerland charity, or we'll show them a selection of the funds that are established to support Summerland projects. And donors have an option to, for some funds, they're open and you can fund that fund. They can establish their own fund, or they can select the Summerland Community Fund, which supports all activities in the community. And so it's really the choices that we offer, and it comes to what the donor's decision ultimately is. Did that explain to you, Janet?
It gives me a better idea. Part of what you do is you invest the funds so they actually grow over time, which is the advantage to however you give your money into the community foundation. Is that not correct? So you can self-direct it in a particular way, but you could just put it to one of the funds where it grows, and then any of the applications would have opportunity to get funding from that fund.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Thank
to reiterate, yes, that's correct. We run a number of foundation grant cycles, and the source of funding for those grants comes from the earnings from the endowment funds. So donors do have the option of donating it to the capital of an endowment fund, and we manage over 150 different funds, most of them being endowment funds. But donors can also go through us to do immediate funding and direct funding for charities as well.
Okay, don't see any other questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you. Now have the public comment opportunity for anything on the agenda. Anybody like to say anything? No, there's nobody online. Move on to the business items, 7.1, responsible liquor consumption in public places. CEO Stat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be speaking to this on behalf of our Director of Community Services, who's taking some time on spring break with her husband and family. So in response to the Summerland Chamber of Commerce and Visit Summerland's request letter to implement the responsible liquor consumption in designated public places initiative indefinitely, staff are bringing forward this recommendation for council's consideration. And you'll note Sally Pierce is here today from the chamber in the audience and the gallery area if there's any questions for Sally as well. As council will recall, last year we did a trial of this initiative which permitted responsible liquor consumption at Summerland's 3 main destination beaches: Peach Orchard Beach, Rotary Beach, and Powell Beach during the months of June, July, and August from 12 noon to 9 p.m. Now, that was a small extension from the original request of 8 p.m., and that was council's decision to do it from noon to 9. Staff followed up with the RCMP, bylaw, and park staff to ask if there are any concerns from last year or for otherwise continuing the initiative. And no major issues have been documented, and in fact, all of them do, in fact, support the extension. They would continue to monitor the beaches to ensure responsible behavior and follow up on any complaints. And if issues arise, as per usual, it'd be expected that the program would be reevaluated, amended, and if necessary, ceased. So staff do recommend that we continue to support this initiative, and council could, of course, amend or terminate the initiative at any time. So we do have a motion. I don't know if it's going to go up on the screen, but it's certainly in your packages, and that's just that the responsible liquor consumption in public places as proposed by the Summerland Chamber and Visit Summerland be endorsed, and that therefore Section 3B of the Parks Regulation Bylaw be waived to permit that responsible liquor consumption at the places mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to our CEO, if I may, if you're representing our Director of Parks and Rec. The only concern I have is June, July, August. Like why not longer? Like, I mean, is this just for tourists, or can our local residents enjoy sitting with a family member or a small family group, let's say down at Rotary Beach, on a little barbecue in early October? You know, so I think I don't like the idea of the 3-month restriction. I think, you know, we've done the pilot. We've had nil feedback, negative feedback on it. So I think we could, I'd like to amend it if possible to include June, July, August, and September, October. And we can revisit it next year again, I guess. And May, sorry.
So you want to put that motion on the table? So as is, except the months, there, it's coming up really quick. Second, okay, it's on the table. Sia, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, so I think it's fine. The only thing that comes to mind is, of course, our seasonal conservation bylaw support doesn't start until the summer period. However, as indicated, we really haven't seen any issues with this, so I don't think we would have a concern through the mayor. And as you indicate, a lot of residents use these areas before the tourist season really picks up. And so it may be an interesting accommodation to service our residents.
So this would come back to us next year. We're just waiving it. We're not amending the bylaw. So it'd have to come back again next year anyway. Yeah, okay. Councillor Barkwell, no? Oh, okay. Councillor Betts.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Councillor Van Alphen for coming up with this amendment. I think that it just makes good sense for the residents of Summerland. I was in support of this motion last year, and this opportunity to just have responsible liquor consumption on our beaches, provided that it's responsible. And I feel like as council, we kept quite a close eye on that in reviewing the development department's, the different reports that came forward monthly to make sure that there weren't these bylaw infractions and that RCMP wasn't being called on as a response to this change. And I found that, me personally, I was asking this every time and we weren't having this increase in calls. So for that reason, I support this opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trainer?
Yeah, I would, I definitely support this. I would do April to October because that's real. No, but realistically, that's when people use the beaches and there's already people picnicking now. I see people down at Powell Beach. They have their picnic set up and they're having, some wine or a drink. So, we have nice weather from April to October. So I don't know, to me, that makes sense that that's the time period when most people are out and about and it's spring. I'm being nitpicky, but I don't know. It probably won't even make a difference. People will do it anyway, but. Can I make a friendly amendment to just do April to October? And then it's clean?
Yeah.
Well, why don't we vote on the amendment? Vote on the amendment. So that's April's thrown in.
Yeah.
Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Peak. So this is just on the amendment. I'll call the question. All in favor of the amendment? Okay, that carries. Councillor Peak.
Yes, as Councillor Van Alphen said, I was going to ask for an expansion on the time as well. I feel that we are fortunate to be in such a wonderful area in terms of the kind of weather that we receive early, that this opportunity is a good opportunity for whether we're visitors or whether we live here full time. So I think it's good for everyone.
Okay, so I don't see any other comments, so I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed, that carries. Okay, thank you. Now we're on to Route 30 free fare survey results and ridership update, and I'll ask our sustainability coordinator to come on up.
All right. Good afternoon, Council. So yes, the presentation today will go over the Route 30 free fare pilot survey results that were done, that the survey was released in February, as well as some of the ridership numbers that we've collected to date, and a quick update on the UMO program that just launched last week.
So I'll just go here, there we go. So as previously mentioned, just the 3 items that we're gonna go through today. So back in April of last year, on the 3rd, council approved a 1-year pilot to allow for Summerland residents to ride for free on the Route 30, which goes between Summerland and Penticton. The intents of this were to provide cost savings to Summerland residents, increase transit ridership on the Route 30 in Summerland, as well as provide the opportunity for Summerland residents to obtain easier and more accessible access to services and amenities in Penticton that may not otherwise be offered here in Summerland. So on October 17th, staff came to council with a brief overview of work to date with UMO as a way to kind of preemptively inform and engage council on the UMO updates. As part of that discussion around the Route 30 program was also brought forward, and it was requested that a survey be implemented in order to understand ridership data and information, as there currently wasn't any prescribed data to date. So in February of this year, between February 2nd and the 25th, a public survey was open and responses were received. As part of that survey, we advertised it through social media with weekly posts during that time frame, as well as the Municipal Hall TV. We had posters up at the bus stops that were on Rosedale. We had the actual driver of the Route 30 distribute little pamphlets to anyone that came on so that they were aware of the survey and how to access it. We also had our webpage updated as well. So there are multiple forms of ways that people were able to get informed and aware of the survey itself. So the survey results. So in total, 150 responses were received, both online and in paper. Paper copies were offered at our Aquatic Center and Municipal Hall, which are both our vendor locations for purchasing tickets and fares for BC Transit. Of those responses, 147, 97% were from Summerland residents. And of those 147, 126 were aware of the free pilot. So we did ask to understand who was aware and who wasn't. So a good chunk of them were aware that the pilot was active and moving forward. So with the age group that we also requested information on, we did see a particular trend with the older age population from 55 to 74, and then we also had a 35 to 44, so kind of that mid-range. So in the survey results, going through those 3 objectives that we have with cost savings, increasing transit, and the increased accessibility to services in Penticton, the survey results are just going to kind of go through that over the next 3 slides. So with cost savings, there were only 106 responses for this particular question of the 126 that were specifically for being aware of the pilot. So I isolated that data. So half of them responded that there were significant savings, with the next tier being slight savings. So overall, we did see a response from the public that responded to this question that we did see cost savings. So in that respect, with those responses in mind, we were able to kind of have a better idea as to how people were interpreting this pilot program. We also received specific feedback in the survey, which also showed that people were appreciative of the cost savings that were provided because of this program. So we had both verbal and survey responses to back that up. So with regards to increased ridership, so this graph has 2 sets of data. We asked 2 questions in the survey, specifically on average, what was your before the pilot program ridership like? And then during the program itself, what was your ridership like? And we saw a very a large shift in before people were using the bus was very infrequent. Most people had never ridden the bus. And then we saw a very drastic shift into people using it multiple times a week. So with that data there, we are seeing that during the pilot, ridership did increase in frequency during those 10 months or so. So with accessibility to amenities. This was done in a multiple choice format. So we listed a whole bunch of areas that we had understood that were intended to be increasing access to through the through the ridership program. And the top 4 responses that we saw from the survey respondents stated that going to shopping and going and doing their errands, they saw a significant accessibility increase because of that. They were also able to better access medical appointments and facilities, as well as pursue social and entertainment opportunities in Penticton, and then work. Oh, there we go. So in the last part of the survey, we asked for specific feedback. We just said if there was anything else that we wanted to hear from us or from the respondents, if there was anything in particular that they wanted to point out. And so I was able to separate out the responses and theme it out with these top 6 themes. So overall, there was great support for the free fare program. We also had, as previously mentioned, responses with positive response and feedback for the cost savings that were a result of it. There was also a request for additional bus stops with emphasis in the lower town area through Trout Creek. As well as increased bus service hours, so going into the later evening and to weekends. And then improving the bus stop information signage. So at our existing bus stops, improving the signage and communication of it in those spaces. And then there was some emphasis on how it benefited the seniors in the community, which is also backed up by the data that we saw for the age range and group of people that were responding to this survey in particular. So for ridership data, so I was able to get more refined data from BC Transit that specifically looked at just Route 30 ridership over several years. So going into 2022, post-COVID, as I guess I can call it, ridership more than doubled from the previous year. This is likely just due to transportation and health mandates lifting and things kind of returning to normal, as we like to call it. So we did see a huge jump that way. And then in 2023, which is also the same year as the free ridership program, when it launched in April 22nd, 2023, we saw a 34% increase compared to ridership in 2022. So we had 16,799 riders during that year. And also just to kind of add some more data, because we all love data, just went month to month to kind of show those increases between those 4 years, but also to show how the monthly data also changes. And we do see a peak very noticeably in the fall, likely just due to people going back to school, going back to specific fall-based programs or work opportunities. So we do see there are some particular times during the year where we do see peaks that way. And I've also included just the first month of 2024. That was when we had the most recent data included in there as well. So for UMO, the fare system that's being launched as of last week on the 13th, this is all instigated through BC Transit. So the entire South Okanagan now has UMO, which is an electronic fare program. So instead of having our paper tickets as well as monthly passes. They've changed it through BC Transit. This was also discussed with council last fall to confirm the fare program that we wanted to implement as part of this program. So the Aquatic Center and Municipal Hall, which are our 2 main vendors here in Summerland, are now selling UMO cards and online fare products. We had engagement previously leading up to this with BC Transit, where they came into the district and had an open table to discuss any of the changes at the Aquatic Center. We also made some social media posts to make people aware of this and link them to the BC Transit UMO page, which had a whole slew of information, fact sheet to help people navigate this program as it gets launched. We have seen so far a few users of it. The big change is some of the fare fare costs have changed to accommodate the lack of tickets that we no longer sell. So we no longer sell paper tickets, but if people still have them, they can still use them. This also goes for monthly passes. If they still have a monthly pass, they can use it all the way up to March, the end of the month, and then they'll have to just transition to a 30-day pass, which is now replacing that monthly pass. So you can buy it at any point during the month, use it for 30 days, and then get your next one after that. Okay, so for today's recommendation, specifically relating to the Route 3, based off the data that was received from the survey and the feedback from it, staff are recommending that council proceed with the continuation of the Route 30 free fare program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Odessa. Questions, anybody? Councillor Peak.
It seems to me that with the data that we've been able to collect, that this is a really good program. And that with 4,000 more people actually doing the traveling, that we have an opportunity to continue this. And I would like to see us look towards that. I wanted to mention something because I'm not quite sure. I believe the food bank distributes paper tickets. Perhaps somebody could follow up with them to educate them on what the change would be and the impact to their clients as well, if they could. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. So, Odessa, if you could remind me, what is our contribution? Was it for the year we were looking at $40,000 for the free transit? Is that what our citizens put into this program?
Through the chair, do you mean, can you clarify that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So what, if I'm not mistaken, for a one-year pilot program, the cost to the district, was it around $40,000?
Through the chair, we estimated it around $20,000.
20,000? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I guess my question is, we had just under 16,800 in 2023 take the free service. Out of that free service, we only had 147 people actually do a survey to say yay or nay. So I have a problem with such a low number of respondents on a survey with compared to, let's say, for instance, 8,400 taking a round trip from Summerland to Penticton based on the 16,000. So we have, in the course of a year, 8,400 people doing a return trip from Summerland to Penticton, but yet only 147 people responded. And I think for a $20,000 investment, we should have had a bit better response to this, because we are asking our citizens of Summerland to subsidize this service. So I'm kind of on the fence with this one.
I think just clarify, the 20,000 is what, if you have the same number of people, that's the bus fares revenue that we would have achieved. We still have to pay the number, whatever the number is, it's paid regardless. So that 20,000 is the bus fare, and that can change. If you have less riders, then it's less than 20,000. If you have more riders, then it'd be more than 20,000, right? That 20,000, you just kind of have to put in perspective. I think so.
Thank you. Your Worship, do we have a number?
Well, it depends on the ridership.
So based on 16,400, what would how close to the 20 grand were we?
Yeah, go ahead.
Through the chair, so in the report, in the financial section, I do summarize within the last 10 months of the program. So between April and I believe January, when we had our last full report to BC Transit, we submit monthly reports to them to show the full ticket revenue that we've received. It was over 13,000 between April and January. So that's what we're at right now for revenue. So subtracting that from the 20,000 we estimated, we're coming up short, but we still have 3 more months left. So
Thank you.
Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if 150 responses is good or not. I mean, of those 8,000 trips, many of them are the same people 5 days a week, right? So it's not 8,000 people or anything like that. So I don't know if that's a good response or not, but it does sort of tell us what they think of the service. And you kind of expect everybody to say, yeah, free service is great. Some sort of different response would be a surprise. But it's also insightful about other aspects of the of the service, and where improvements can be made, like the signage. I don't know how many, if, quite a few said the signage was poor, then maybe we should pass that on. I guess one thing that really annoys me is that Penticton went with free bus passing, and they're touting it as the first community to do that. People under 24 now are free ride for free in Penticton. I'm not sure if it's experimental for a year or if it's considered permanent, but there are no leaders. We know about Penticton anyway. And when you reported to council before, we weren't really sure if the numbers were right because the heading said, used to be the on-call, on-demand service and seemed to include those rides too. Did we ever get clarification on that?
So the data that I presented today is the actual proper data for Route 30. There was a lot of confusion, unfortunately, with just within BC Transit and the data and being able to separate it out from the rest of the numbers that they calculate. There are ambulatory ended up not being what we thought it was. It's not actually ambulance rides. It's just if they get an on-call to go to a medical appointment or things like that, that's what they called it. But yes, this is the refined data that I was able to collect. So that reflects Route 30. So yeah, that should be the more current, accurate data that we have to date.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Odessa, for coming forward with another report for us. It's always well thought out and I appreciate that. For me, what I'm trying to kind of recall from our discussions when we voted towards putting into place the Route 30 free fare plan was really this encouragement to our citizens to start riding the bus, start using the bus for this reason, and not necessarily to offer an indefinite program supporting a free service. So for me, I really think like the data shows that we have successfully gotten more riders. And I think for me, personally, I would prefer to see some of our opportunities expanded. Perhaps like the next suggestion from BC Transit that came to us was about adding another route in Summerland and having additional stops. I would rather see us continue or restart collecting fares on our Route 30 and find the way to expand to have better service. So that's where I stand at this time.
Councillor Sparkle.
Yeah, I was maybe a little bit disappointed and surprised that ridership didn't go up more than it shows, but nevertheless, I think I would like to continue with the free service and continue to try and give it attention and promotion and give it a few more years. And the question that Councillor Betts brings up, well, let's wait until BC Transit has a proposal for us in hand before we make any decisions because of, say, expanded service. But maybe the expanded service should be free too. So I think that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, that's kind of my way of thinking. I think in terms of the survey numbers, I was kind of disappointed in the number as well. But when you look at the age groupings of who took the survey, the one glaring age group that didn't take the survey were young people, and that's probably just because young people don't do surveys, but we do know a lot of young people take that bus, as we could see from the data of how much it spikes in the fall when they're going back to school. And I don't take the bus very often, but when I do, I always try to talk to the people who are on the bus. And in fact, when Councillor Barkle and I took it a couple of months ago, we were sat at the right of the back of the bus with a girl coming back from Penn High, and we had a great chat with her. And those young people, I think, really appreciate this more than anybody. So, I agree that it's worth looking at this again once if we do introduce a local service. And I think we have to then, if we're changing the service and bringing in a local service, then we have to look at everything. We have to look at fares. We have to look at, and I would be in favor of maintaining the free service until such a time we introduce a local service or change it somehow, and then we have to revisit the whole thing. So that would be my preference. Councillor Trainer.
I agree with what you said. I think 1 year is not necessarily enough time. We're still building up the whole transit program in the Okanagan, and these things take a while. It takes a while to get people out of their cars and to break habits and to learn about new routes. And I think as that system improves over the next couple of years, that we'll start to see a lot more people taking transit. And so I would be in favor of going for at least another year, just to kind of build on the momentum that we've already got going and see where we can go from there.
Councillor Van Elsen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know it wasn't very popular last time I brought it up, but I'll bring it up again. But I'm not opposed, but I've always been opposed to a one-way. We're paying for this transit for our citizens. It'd be nice if Penticton would do the same. You know, because there's lots of opportunities here. There's a lot of seniors in Penticton who have loved ones in our care homes, in our seniors villages and what have you. Why not the same? Reciprocate, you know, have them have the same type of program. So there are people, you know, the Penticton residents can come here for free and we can go to Penticton for free. I think it's you know, I'll support it, but I think it should be a two-way street personally.
Well, I think the city of Penticton should be contributing the service the same as we are, but good luck with that. Councillor Peak.
May I bring the motion forward as presented?
Okay, I have a seconder, Councillor Trainer. Any further discussion? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Patton, Councillor Betts opposed. That carries. Bill 44. This must be Mr. Dolvett. Go ahead, Brad. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah. So we're just bringing back this proposed bylaw amendment for our development application procedures bylaw. It was presented to council at our previous council meeting. Specifically, what's changed since the last iteration of the proposed amendment bylaw was the requirement still for a developer to place a development notice sign on the property for rezonings that do not require a public hearing. If council remembers, for Bill 44, we are now legislated to no longer require a public hearing for those rezoning applications that are in conformance with our official community plan and are also for residential development. And so we are still prescribing through this bylaw that the applicant has to notify adjacent landowners in accordance with legislation and also place a development notice sign, but not required to have a public information meeting nor a public hearing. I'm happy to take any questions on this one.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Brad, I make note that in the staff report, it speaks to not having a developer open house. And, you know, I feel that we should be still doing that because I feel that we serve the public and that an information session is the opportunity for the public to have some questions. They're going to be educated to the fact that because of the new legislation, that certain things will be happening regardless. But if you're in a neighborhood, I think it's very interesting to better understand what's coming to your neighborhood, what the expectation of the developer is, what the design of the buildings are. I just think there's still an opportunity for our public to have that in place.
Councillor Van Elfen.
Well, with Bill 44, this is what the government is pretty much telling us is going to happen. I'd like to be consistent with other communities, you know, our neighboring communities. I mean, if this is what we're being told from Victoria is the new rules and changes, then I support this motion.
Okay, Brad, do you know what Penticton and other South Okanagan communities are doing in respect to these public information meetings and events?
I think a lot of local governments are taking different approaches. Some municipalities used to require a notification to council before they can consider first reading, even like saying we have this project, it's come forward as an application here. Are you council allowing it to proceed to public consultation? Some of those frameworks are still occurring throughout the Okanagan. Specifically with regards to the public information meeting, I don't think there's been a lot of changes yet, per se on other local governments, in terms of their procedural bylaws, other than the public hearing being removed, which is an immediate change now with the legislation. Again, I think the intent here, though, from the province's perspective, is that the public's opportunity for comment is in the official community plan, and that plan has to be updated now legislatively every 5 years. So that's the intent of the waiver of the public hearing.
Okay, and if OCP amendment is required, would they still be required to have a public information meeting?
Yes, that's correct. So if there's any rezonings as well, if it doesn't not applicable to the criteria that the province has laid out, that requires no public hearing. So it could be a rezoning for an industrial property or a commercial property. Those ones still have to go through a public hearing process. So they would still have to go through a public information meeting, but definitely any changes to our official community plan would also require a public information meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not certain about this, but I think I'm leaning towards Councillor Peak's view. If we take Councillor Patton's view that the builders respond to the people in the market and such, perhaps after public information session, some of the comments and concerns of local residents would be taken into consideration, and we wind up overall with a better project. So I see little harm and some benefit to having the public information session required still.
CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the province's intent with the changes in Bill 44 to eliminate the public hearings in these certain contexts. And I would just say we should exercise caution in doing anything that would otherwise look like a de facto public hearing anyway. I think we have to be careful there. In fact, we may even need to make some procedure bylaw changes, possibly to some of our public comment opportunities, even before the meeting where there's things on the agenda that, if we're inviting public comment, are essentially acting unlawfully, potentially, with these provincial changes. So I do think we have to be careful there.
Yeah, I think, on top of that, if one of the intents of the legislation is to speed up the development process, this isn't helping to speed it up. And really, when you think about all, the developments that we have that are a bit contentious or controversial or large scale, they all require OCP amendments. If you think the hotel or Banks Crescent or anything like that, all those are going to require OCP amendments, and they'll still have to go through that whole public process. Most of the things we're talking about here probably wouldn't even have public information meetings to begin with. So I hesitate myself personally throwing in public information meetings. I think that could be a bit of a hornet's nest. Councillor Peak.
I'd like to clarify, I wasn't specifically asking for a public information hearing that we would require. I was speaking to the staff report, which is not requiring a developer-directed public information meeting. I think the opportunity for a development-directed public information meeting is a good one. And I serve the public. The legislation directs the council to do things in a certain manner. But I think the opportunity for a developer to having a public information session is a good thing for our community. So maybe I didn't make myself clear. I don't think we need to do a public information meeting as we have in the past, Brad, but for the developers to have an open house is a good thing.
Okay, Councillor Patton, then Councillor Barkle.
Thank you, Worship. I think when we brought this forward was in relations to Councillor Betts. And I think what this was all about was that once the bill goes through, there is going to be a point where there would be no public inquiry into what is happening on a piece of property. The reason that we did this was to have the builder post a sign so that it allowed the neighbors to know what was going to be happening on that piece of property. It wasn't a means for an open house. It was just for public knowledge of what is going to be happening, since the province has taken away the ability of the municipality to do the open meetings in regards to where people could have their sayings in this. And we already know that it's through the OCPs, and there's going to be on the larger projects, that's already going to still happen, where we're going to be having the open houses and the public hearings. That's not going to change. This is only on those rezones that people, that a sign will be posted so that the neighbors will actually know what is actually happening on that piece of property, and it's not a surprise at the end.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the CAO's comments here, if I can, and if council gives me the time. I regardless of Councillor Peak's perspective, that it is just a directed open house meeting. There is caution for us during this application process in receiving that public feedback as part of an application process, and requiring the developer to receive that feedback, and them not listening to the public, and then council being put in a position of having to approve or not approve a development where we're legislated to not listen to the public because there's no public hearing requirement. So there will be opportunity for public to still submit pieces of written correspondence to council. But the province has been very clear here that these type of applications that are in conformance with our official community plan are ones that council has to make the decision on without the benefit of public input.
Councillor Barkle.
Well, I very much disagree with the Director of Development Services interpretation here. The province operates through legislation, and what they're doing is taking away the requirement for a public hearing. And that's a specific legislated requirement that's not going to be there. They're not putting in legislation that says you cannot hear from the public. It just says you don't hold things up with a public hearing. And that's a formal process of council, and that formal process is no longer there. It doesn't mean that other information can't be received. But I don't really see the public information session as being for council's information, or for, maybe people will write letters after hearing it, but a sign is going to raise more questions than answers, that's for sure. And so the public information session, I think, should be just that, for the developer to tell the people that are interested, who bother to come out, what's going to happen, that without any, I mean, what's going to happen, and maybe on their own volition make some changes because of comments from the public. And I don't see it crossing any legislative boundaries because the only legislation is that you don't have that public hearing process.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Councillor Barkwell and Councillor Peak. And even if I don't agree, doesn't mean I don't respect the conversation and the discussion. And so what I'm going to contribute to this conversation is that these legislative amendments are to encourage infill and rebuilding in our communities and densification. And the structure is that within our OCP, within the zoning, these buildings are going to be allowed between 3 and 4 units. It's allowed within the structure of our setbacks and within the requirements that we put out. And so I just can't see that it would be much difference with our developers unless they're asking for a variance in the build. They are allowed to do this build. So we're asking for a public comment opportunity on something that is legislatively allowed. I just don't understand what the benefit of that would bring, or to the neighborhood. I just don't think that it would bring peace and tranquility to our community when when the government in our BC government is saying that we are prioritizing building over not in my backyard building of our neighbors and infill. And it is going to be hard. If that was my neighbor and my view was obstructed of Giant's Head Mountain, I would be upset. I understand. I understand it would be so challenging, but it's still, this is what has come. And we now have to accept this building within these restrictions.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
I agree with Councillor Betts wholeheartedly. So you're gonna have a public information session. Basically, I'm the developer. I'm gonna have a public information session. Come on in, grab a coffee, have a donut. But I'm not listening to you. Because the legislation says I can do this. I'm allowed to build that fourplex. If I follow their criteria, it's all to move the building permit along quicker, to get more infill, more affordable type of housing. I don't see how this is going to be a benefit. And, I would possibly, personally, probably not attend those meetings, because then the public's going to come back and go, you didn't listen to me. Well, it's not me. It's Victoria that made the rules. So, I again approve the motion.
So we're just talking about district directed public information meetings, and there's nothing stopping a developer from having a public information meeting anyway, if they want. But Brad, what could you just off the top of your head tell me how many district directed public information meetings we've had in recent years for only rezonings for projects that don't include an OCP amendment?
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer on the spot here. I'm thinking a lot of them were site specific, perhaps rezonings. There was 2 I recall in the Bentley Road industrial area. Some of these rezonings already I had the abilities to waive under the procedural bylaw if there was nothing really changing in terms of the zone or the designation, and it was an intensification of the use. So I could waive the public information meeting, and those provisions are still within the procedural bylaw. Most of the rezonings that we've went through have had an official community plan amendment, primarily because we've had different designations within our OCP. We've got the low density intensification designation, which is different than our low density residential designation. So if there was any application of the RSD1I zone, it would have triggered an OCP amendment normally if it wasn't surrounding the downtown core. We had that applied for a few times as well. And each one of those had to go through an OCP amendment, and then also the public information meeting. I think for the most part, the OCP amendment has always been a requirement for those that are also triggering a public information meeting, and those that were just like a site-specific change for an existing industrial property, then it was waived in that case.
Yeah, so.
And there was a few cases, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
There's a couple of cases I'm aware of where it was a development permit and the developer did it on their own right because it wasn't required for a development permit.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty much moot anyway. I mean, if it's industrial, it doesn't apply. We're not something we're talking here, and I can't really think of too many of these things that weren't OCP amendments. Councilor Markmo.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not hung up on this one way or the other, but I lean towards that because also remember we're going to be completely redoing our zoning. It's down to 3. So there'll be fewer OCP amendments because we'll also be doing the OCP to sort of make it all fit with the new zoning. So I don't know if what's happened in the past is particularly relevant. I know that all this legislation is more geared towards what's gone on in places like Vancouver, where groups have held up development in a big way. We haven't really seen development held up here because of public opposition, other than Banks Crescent, but that died on its own weight. So I don't know. Either way, whatever council says.
Okay, well, if somebody could bring forward a motion. Councilor Van Elfen,
I'll bring forward a staff recommendation.
you just get that up on the screen. Thanks. And if get a seconder, please, Councilor Patton. Any further discussion? Councilor Peak.
I'm bringing it back to the fact that when we discussed this before at council, part of the discussion was to still require a development notice sign. Would that be required with this motion? Because I do think that's important.
Thanks, so Mr. Dolvin.
Yes, that was the reason why we delayed the hearing of the reading of this bylaws because we amended it to reflect that it's still a requirement to place the sign.
Thank you, Brad.
Okay, so the motion's up on the screen. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That carries. Okay, we'll just move on, or do you want to break? If we took a break, would the thermostat go up in the meantime? Okay, so we'll come back at 2:25. Thanks. 7.5 South Okanagan Sailing Association, and excuse me, guys, let's get back. Manager procurement, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We're here today to discuss a long-term lease for SOSA at 11619 Lakeshore Drive South. So SOSA has been leasing the subject property from the district since 1964. From that property, they operate their sailing club. They're a nonprofit organization that offers sailing lessons, water safety courses, family recreational use, and organizing sailing competitions. They also provide public access to the foreshore and maintain the area. So the parcel of land that they lease from us, District Lot 5096, is just a narrow strip of land that's separated from the foreshore by another narrow strip of land, a narrow strip of crown land. So I understand that the property line for the district-owned parcel is the natural boundary of the foreshore, and the crown land parcel is fill. Additionally, there's another parcel for the foreshore and the dock. So if you look at attachment 5 to the report, you'll see a survey plan that SOSA actually recently obtained. And staff has outlined in red the portion that's the Crown land tenure area, and in blue, the district property area. I might actually have my colors reversed to there, or just the narrow strip of land. So the district previously held the Crown land tenure for the fill portion and foreshore portions of the land adjacent to District Lot 5096. I understand that our Crown land tenure for this land expired as part of a head lease that expired on July 1st, 2008, and a renewal wasn't pursued by the district. So in order to continue using this property for its intended purpose and to allow SOSA to maintain and repair the land and improvements such as their dock, SOSA requested the district's support to apply for Crown land tenure directly. The province required the district's consent as the upland owner in order for the province to grant tenure to SOSA. At the time, SOSA also requested council's support to extend the term of their lease to match the term of the Crown land tenure if they were successful. So council supported these requests at a May 19th, 2019 council meeting. And we provided a letter confirming council support to SOSA, which they included with their Crown land tenure application. SOSA has now received Crown land tenure from the province for the fill and foreshore portions of the land. So rather than amending the lease, which was originally contemplated in 2019, staff recommend that the parties agree to terminate the existing lease and enter into a net new lease, just to remove the complexity that comes along with amending documents multiple times, as the existing lease has already been amended and several sections would need to be amended further to suit a longer term lease. We also note that the sketch plan that was attached to the current lease would need to be updated because SOSA is actually only leasing lot 5096 from us. And in the current lease, the sketch plan attached indicated all 3 of these parcels that we're talking about today. So entering into a new lease would be cleaner and will facilitate future lease administration, which is particularly important due to the long-term nature of the proposed lease, 30 years. It's likely that several staff members will oversee the administration of the new lease over the term. So it's nice to not have to go back through all these amendments to try to figure out what happened. The proposed lease agreement has a term of May 1st, 2024 to November 1st, 2053 to align with the expiration of their Crown land tenure. So their current lease, which expires in May 2027, has an annual rent of $3,475. We're proposing that the new lease agreement commence with the current rental fee and be subject to an annual 2.5% increase each year. So this rate increase should help keep pace with inflation. We note that SOSA is a nonprofit association, so the district does have the option to charge SOSA less than fair market value, provided that we publish a notice of assistance pursuant to the community charter. However, we're not currently charging them below market rent value. So in order to continue charging fair market value, we're recommending this 2.5% annual increase and also the ability to reassess the rent every 5 years. We also note that we may need to obtain market rental valuation reports periodically in the future at our own cost to confirm market value. And our Director of Finance also noted that as a nonprofit organization, SOSA has utilized our permissive tax exemption program in the past in order to lower their overall annual property taxes. For 2024, for example, the estimated PTE on municipal taxes alone is $24,638. So in conclusion, we are recommending that council approve entering into a new lease agreement with SOSA for 11619 Lakeshore Drive South to align with their Crown Land tenure agreement for the adjacent foreshore. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for the report. I do have, in my head, a bit foggy. So we take into consideration the district-owned property, which is the Summerland Golf Course. We know what they pay. We talk about Kettle Valley Railway. We know what they pay. This seems the amount that we're asking for this lease on this small, way smaller piece of property really seems extensive. Like, is there a reason? Like, I realize that it's market value, but is there nothing that we can do for the Sailing Association on that small piece of property than the amount of lease rents that we're looking for?
Yeah.
Yeah, through the chair, you do have the option to consider leasing the parcel for less than fair market value. So you could establish a rate that everyone's comfortable with. And we would just need to ensure that when we advertise this new lease, that we're also advertising a notice of assistance pursuant to the community charter to say that we're leasing it at less than fair market value.
Councillor Betts. Follow up?
I'll wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think your comments quite interesting. I mean, so right now the current lease is $3,475. And it's really only being used 2 months, maybe 3 months of the year on a parcel of land in between Crown and roadway that is otherwise essentially unusable. So, you know, I don't want to pretend that I know what the fair market value is, and that's in here about going up to 2.5% annually each year. But over 30 years, that's a large increase on this little slice of land that isn't otherwise usable. So for me, I'm actually not certain about that increase as compared to keeping it at a rate that just makes sense for the long term so that this organization can continue to function. You know, it supports children's camps, learning how to sail. Like, it is a very limited scope of operations and money-making opportunities. So, you know, I'm not certain what that number is, whether that's staying at the number that's on here for a very long time or otherwise, but I'm open to this discussion further.
Councillor Barker.
All things considered, I can go for, if all it takes is to insert an extra line in the notice that it's receiving charitable support or whatever the term is, I could go for $1 a year. You know, it is really a community benefit 100%. It's like having another park.
CAO.
And just for, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think we had any concerns raised, Dana, from the association themselves on the rate change, but maybe you could speak to that.
I did speak with Peter Hatcher, the Commodore, who is in the audience today, and he noted that they weren't aware of the ability to receive less than fair market value, and they understood that this would be a continuation of their previous lease. However, they might be interested in pursuing a request for less than fair market value in 5 years if we were to adjust the rate further. So it is, you know, something that is of interest to them.
CAO.
And then the second, thank you, Dana and Mr. Mayor, just the second piece, and council might see it in the report. We do offer significant support also in another way, which is the permissive tax exemption in the amount of $24,638 $38 for 2024 estimate. So just for consideration as well.
Yeah, I personally, I think it's the premise of tax exemption. That's where organizations benefit the most. I think we need to be consistent with other nonprofits that lease land in the community. I don't think, I think we don't want to be favoring one over the other. It is a small piece of land, but it is a lakefront. It is lakefront property, so it is a pretty valuable piece of land. My understanding of how the Crown works into this is that Crown land is all reclaimed land, right? The district was waterfront property at one point, and I believe we have guaranteed guaranteed access to the lake because of that's considered lakefront property, right? So there is it might be small, but there's a lot of value to that land, I think. So I'm happy to go either way. My main thing is that we're consistent with other nonprofits and that we're not favoring one over another. So not sure where we go from here, but Councillor Barkman.
Yeah, I don't know what to be consistent with other nonprofits. What other arrangements do we have for district land used by nonprofits? The golf course was mentioned. Rackets Club. What do they pay?
They're not.
Yeah, that's not on district land at all. Yeah. Yacht Club. Yacht Club on?
Sorry, Dana would know.
I thought that this might come up. So we have the Summerland Museum, the Arts Council, the Chamber of Commerce, who have a slightly different situation, and the Summerland Youth Center, who all have leases of $1 a year. The Chamber of Commerce is a little bit different because we also have the fee for service agreements with them. The Summerland Curling Club, their fee is currently $38,000 a year. I think they probably bring in considerable revenue through their curling and also the bar that they have on the property. The Summerland Golf Society lease was set at fair market value after a market rental valuation report was done in, I guess it was probably 2017 or something when the current lease was entered into. And it's currently $14,000 a year, but going for property valuation for the 2024 fee. So every 5 years, it goes for fair market rental valuation again at our cost. So it can cost a couple $1,000s to get a fair market rental valuation report. Little Chicks Daycare, which is a not-for-profit now, is $400 a year. And the Summerland Yacht Club is currently about $23,000 a year. We also pay for a Crown Land tenure lease. So we adjust their lease fee along with that when we get a rate change.
So it's hard to be consistent when it's not consistent. Councillor Barker.
Well, I would point out that the curling club has a lot of operational costs to the district, whereas the sailing club doesn't cost the district a penny to operate there. So once again, I think that it'd be reasonable to add $3,000, $3,500 to the amount that we're waiving just to make the lease free.
So do you want to put a motion on?
I just had a question though. How is it if taxes are based on value of the land, how is the land only worth $3,000 a year and there's $24,000 in taxes? It seems like the land's undervalued, but nevertheless, I'd make it even less.
We would have to ask our Director of Finance for more information on that.
The assessment.
But they may be paying the taxes on all 3 parcels of land in question. So the district-owned parcel, the fill, and also the foreshore and dock parcel.
Councillor Betts?
Thank you. Quick question then, does SOSA maintain the dock and building at their own cost?
Through the chair, yes. I don't believe we have any involvement in maintaining the property.
Thank you.
Councillor Marco?
So I've looked at the motion, tried to figure out, okay, how would I amend it? I'll throw it out there on the floor. We'll see if it's accepted that the council approved the lease agreement with the South Okanagan Sailing Association for 11619 Lakeshore Drive South with a term of May 1, 2024 to November 1, 2053, as included as attachment 1 with the exception that the lease rate be changed to $1 per year to the South Okanagan Sailing Association lease agreement for 11619 Lakeshore Drive South. Report from the Manager, Procurement and Contract Administration dated March 19th, 2024. And that the following statutory notice to the public, the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the lease with the South Okanagan Sailing Association on behalf of council, and the current lease agreement with the SOSA dated October 15, 2017, as amended May 31, 2022, be terminated.
Corporate officer, does that work? Yeah, still have a seconder. So, Councillor Patton, any further discussion? Councillor Betts?
I only hope that with this kind of opportunity that SOSA might be able to expand its programming. But I think that this is, I think it's a good opportunity on a piece of land that serves Summerland residents. And there's no exclusion to that. You know, anybody can be a member of this group and learn how to sail.
Councillor Pate?
I think to have a sailing club and the associate activity going on in our community is really important. And this is supported by volunteers. I think it's a great opportunity.
Okay, Councillor Bart?
And I hope all those sailors learn how to swim too. I've tipped a sailboat lots of times at our pool, yeah.
Okay, I'll be in my 90s when this comes back to us. So I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed? Or any opposed? You opposed, Councillor Brett? And one, Councillor Nelson opposed. That carries. On to the next one, Summerland Timber Mart lease. Dana.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So now we're here to consider leasing the rear portion of 9111 Peach Orchard Road to Summerland Timber Mart until April 20th, 2027, with the option to extend for 5 additional years. I will note that the report was originally submitted with a renewal term of 3 years, but we subsequently met with Summerland Timber Mart representatives and agreed that the longer extension period would be beneficial if we keep the continued use of this property. So the 9111 Peach Orchard Road is the Summerland Youth Center Association building. And this is the very rear portion of that property, which we've leased to Summerland Timber Mart for many years, and they have been using it as part of their yard to store building materials. Their current lease expired February 28th, 2022, and has been holding over. We obtained a market rental valuation report from a licensed appraiser in early 2023 to ascertain fair market value, and it represented a very significant increase in rent for Summerland Timber Mart to continue using this space. So it more than doubles their rent from $6,510 per year to $13,400 per year. So we met with Summerland Timber Mart to discuss their options, such as reducing the square footage of the parcel. We gave them the opportunity to obtain a second appraisal at their own cost, talked about terminating the lease or what the options might look like. At the time, Summerland Timber Mart had expressed concern about the increased cost and the potential of losing access to that site if the recreation center referendum was successful. The site plan for the potential recreation center at the arena indicated that a portion of that parcel and a portion of the old skate park behind it would be used for parking for the new rec center, but did allocate part of that parcel and part of the old skate park to Summerland Timber Mart if we wanted to continue leasing to them. However, they indicated that it was a smaller parcel and less convenient for their operations. So
Due to the uncertainty around the future of this parcel of land, we had decided to hold off on bringing a new lease agreement with them forward to council until after the Recreation Center referendum had passed. So as the Recreation Center referendum wasn't successful and there aren't any immediate changes on the horizon for this parcel of land, we recommend entering into a new lease agreement with Summerland Timber Mart to bring the lease into compliance and continue charging fair market value. So we proposed entering into an initial term of 3 years with the option to extend for an additional 5 years. This term will still provide us with the flexibility to utilize the parcel in the short or medium term if the need for the land should arise. We do note that a land acquisition and disposition strategy is currently being developed in consultation with KPMG, a consulting firm, and the future use of this parcel is being considered as part of that strategy. And also note that Summerland Timber Mart has expressed interest in potentially purchasing this land should it not be earmarked for future district uses as part of that study. So the proposed lease provides both parties with the option to terminate the lease agreement without cause on 6 months' notice, or a mutual agreement we can terminate at any time. And as discussed, the financial implications, the annual rent would increase from $6,510 to $13,400. Summerland Timber Mart did decline to obtain a second appraisal at their own cost. And because they are a commercial business, we are required to charge them fair market value. So we don't have the flexibility to, phase into a higher rate or offer a lower rate without documentation to support that. So we propose that we enter into the new lease agreement with the proposed fair market rental rate of $13,400 per year and apply an annual 2.5% increase, which is consistent with recent commercial leases that we've been entering into to keep pace with inflation. And that concludes my report. If you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Alphen.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the pictures here of that piece of property. Does that also include the arena parking lot where they store material too? No?
Through the chair, no.
Any other questions? Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will note that as a business owner, jumping a lease rate double in 1 year is difficult to swallow. I think that's just an unreasonable pressure. And I'm not satisfied with what's on the table right now.
Okay, Councillor Van Alphen.
I'll move the agenda item 7.6.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Patton. Any further discussion? Councillor Turner.
Dana, just for clarification, you said that we have to charge this amount, right? And where is that policy or rule again?
So the community charter specifically prohibits a local government from providing any assistance, including leasing, lending, or disposing of land at less than fair market value to a business or for-profit organization.
Sorry, that was in the community charter?
Yes, section 24.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Councillor Barco.
Even if that wasn't in the community charter, I don't know why we would want to support a particular business. But I do agree it's a big increase, but that's what the appraisal said that they didn't take issue with. And so I think we owe it to the taxpayers of Summerland to charge that full rate. I'm a little bit bothered by the amount of the arena parking lot that they used, but I don't think there's been a huge outcry, so we'll wait until there's complaints before we tackle that one.
Councillor P.
I understand that under the community charter, we cannot benefit a business. So they're going to pay $1,100 a month for this piece of property. It is a substantial increase, but obviously this extra storage is important to them or they wouldn't be pursuing what they are. So I will support the presentation and the adoption of this.
Okay, so Councillor Betts.
Thank you. And thank you for the discussion always. For me, I mean, the fair market value is always based on somebody's opinion, and Builders Mart chose not to pursue getting a second opinion. But if you look at this leased area, they don't have any frontage. It truly is an otherwise worthless and unused piece of land. I'm just questioning that. You know, that value there is value in our land downtown, but this parcel doesn't face any roadways. It's not usable or rentable to anyone else. And they're willing to pay anything. So I just challenge the accuracy.
Councillor Pete.
I make note of, in terms of the sketches, that this particular business also owns a small building that fronts on Rosedale, and they could possibly take that building down and create storage space if, in fact, they wanted to do that.
Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion that's on the table? Any opposed? Councillor Betts opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to bylaws for adoption, sewer parcel tax bylaw. That was discussed at the last meeting, I guess. So I'll just call the question. All in favor of adoption? None opposed? That carries. Items removed from consent, the Hudson's Hope letter, Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. I've read the letter in regards to Bill 34, and I think it affects every community because of what our provincial government, the legislation that's coming forward. And so I'm just wondering if we are interested in doing a letter of support in regards to their restricting public consumption of illegal substance act. And so I'm just wondering if we're interested in doing a letter of support.
Isn't this the letter that the mayor of Kelowna initiated and all the mayors of the Okanagan signed?
I'm wondering if it was the same one or if this is another one from Hope, from the Hudson's Hope. That
I think this is the one that I mean, it's the same issue. That was initiated by the city of Kelowna, and all of us mayors in the Okanagan signed it. You probably remember that, right? So, I mean, we could do another, but we've already done it.
Yeah. I wondered if it was the same, but I wasn't quite sure. But yeah, I think it was the last council meeting or the one before that we supported the city of Kelowna in regards to this also. So I'm good. We've done it once. There's no point in doing it again. Thank you.
Okay. So we just have to receive this for information, this letter. So come on, somebody want to receive that? Okay, Councillor Patton, Councillor Peak, all in favor? That carries. Public comment period.
Hi, Council, Brad Besler. I'm here to clear up some misinformation being spread around town about me and my FOI requests. First of all, it is a lie to say that my FOI requests in 2023 cost taxpayers anywhere near $200,000. I was only provided 13 FOI response packages in 2023, and many of those response packages were small and totaled less than 5 pages. Second, it is a lie to say that district staff spent 100% of their work hours processing my FOI requests in 2023. Let's look at the timeline. On July 5th, 2023, I submitted an FOI request for documents related to CAO Graham Stat and HR Manager Marty Mander's firing of long-term district employee Martin Stam. But after July 5th, I wasn't provided any FOI response packages. The district stopped providing me FOIs last year, shortly after I discovered through FOI requests that Councillor Aaron Trainer booked a 2-bedroom suite in violation of district policies. So is this a coincidence or a cover-up? And the third major piece of misinformation is saying district staff would need to review 47,000 documents for my FOI requests. The district uses software that automatically removes duplicates, which greatly reduces the number of documents that staff actually need to review. Graham Stat, as the district's FOI head, misled the privacy commissioner with regards to key facts. And I see your strategy. Spread false information about me so that taxpayers think I'm the bad guy. But under Section 65 of the FOI Act, it is an offense to mislead the privacy commissioner or its adjudicators. So during the 2-day hearing for this judicial review in BC Supreme Court, I will explain how Graham Stat intentionally misled the OIPC in bad faith. I look forward to setting the record straight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a resolution to close the meeting to the public pursuant to sections 91 C, E, G, and M, and section 92B of the community charter. Councillor Betts and Councillor Van Elfen, all in favor? That carries. Thanks.